Today, we're going to talk about something that almost all of us feel, but we rarely talk about it, and that is, why are we so terrified of silence?
I mean, really think about it. The second a room goes quiet, what do? You're waiting in line, you're at a red light, and boom, without even thinking, your hand is reaching for that phone. It's almost a reflex, right?
And this right here is why. That quiet moment, it doesn't feel peaceful. No, for so many of us, it feels like you're under this sudden intense spotlight. It's an interrogation you are just not ready for.
All right, let's really dig into this feeling. We're calling it the uncomfortable quiet because it points to this really deep conflict, this sense that maybe we're just performing a life instead of actually living it. You know, you might tell yourself, oh, I'm just bored. But if you're really honest, it's something deeper, isn't it? It's this low-grade restlessness that you can't quite put your finger on. An itch that makes just being still feel almost impossible.
And living with that restlessness all the time, it creates this persistent feeling that something is just wrong. You're hitting your marks, you're doing all the things you're supposed to do, but a part of you feels like you're just an actor playing a role, even in your own life. So, to really get what's going on here, we got to turn to someone like Carl Jung. He had this idea about two key parts of our psyche that are basically at war with each other, especially when things get quiet. He called them the persona and the shadow.
Okay, so first up, you've got the persona. Think of this as your public face, right? It's the impressive, competent, super agreeable mask that we all put on to navigate the world. It's how we get liked, how we succeed, how we fit in.
But then there's the shadow self. And this is where we've packed away everything we've been taught is unacceptable. It's the storage locker for all the parts of ourselves we had to disown just to stay lovable or good in the eyes of our family, our friends, the world.
And here you can see the conflict laid out, clear as day. On one side, you have the persona, that's the mask, the performance. On the other, the shadow, which is holding all those real feelings you suppress. The anger, the grief, the needs. So you've got your agreeable self versus your authentic self. And this, right here, is why silence is so terrifying. It's the moment the shadow finally gets the microphone.
So naturally, we don't want the shadow to take the stage. How do we keep it submerged? Well, we build a defense system. And our number one weapon in that defense? Noise, distraction.
And this defense system, it's made up of really common, everyday habits. It's the YouTube video that autoplays, the podcast that's always on, the endless scrolling through Instagram or TikTok, or even just filling every single empty moment with chit-chat. Each one of these is a tool to keep the shadow pushed down. Okay, so here's the most important part of all this. This is not a personal failing. You're not weak for doing this. Your brain has literally been retrained over years and years to see silence as a threat to the identity you've so carefully built, a threat to your persona.
But what if we looked at that discomfort differently? What if it's not a sign that something's broken? What if that feeling is actually the sensation of your true, authentic self finally trying to exist? Without being watched, without performing.
And that brings us to the how. How do we fix this? The good news is we can actually learn to practice stillness. We can use it as a tool to finally meet our true selves. And honestly, it's way simpler than you might think.
The whole process is surprisingly straightforward. It really just boils down to these 3 steps. First, you just have to recognize the distraction. Then, you practice the pause. You resist that knee-jerk urge. And finally, you use this really powerful technique called neutral labeling. Let me show you what I mean.
Okay, so let's walk through a real-world example. Imagine you're sitting in a quiet room and that familiar, painful thought pops into your head. I'm a failure.
Now, your gut instinct is probably to fight that thought, right? To argue with it, or spiral down into why it might be true. But with neutral labeling, you do something totally different. You just mentally note it as thinking. That's it. You don't judge it, you don't fight it, it's just thinking. And this is why this is so powerful. By simply labeling the thought instead of becoming the thought, you create this tiny but crucial sliver of space. It's the space between the trigger and your reaction. And in that space, you get a choice. So here's a really powerful exercise you can try. The next time you feel that restless urge to grab your phone, just don't. Wait. Stay with that uncomfortable feeling for just 30 seconds. And in those 30 seconds,
Ask yourself one simple, direct question. What am I trying not to feel right now? You don't have to fix it. You don't have to solve it. The goal is just to name it. Because naming the feeling, that's the very first step toward integrating it.
So, what's the end game here? It's really important to get this. The goal isn't to have a perfectly silent mind or to get rid of every negative feeling. That's impossible. The real goal is something much deeper. It's about integration. It's about wholeness.
And this is such a crucial distinction. Wholeness doesn't mean you'll never feel pain or anxiety or anger again. Of course you will. It means building an inner self that's strong enough to hold all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, without collapsing. It's about integrating everything you are.
I love this quote because it just captures the whole idea so perfectly. Your emotions, your thoughts, they're like waves, always changing, rising and falling. But you are not the waves. You are the deep, vast ocean that contains all of them.
So, I want to leave you with a challenge, a question. Tonight, can you sit in silence for just 5 minutes? No phone, no TV, no music. And when that urge to escape hits you, and believe me, it will, can you just notice it? Because that feeling of discomfort, that's not a bug, it's a feature. It's the sign that you're on the verge of meeting the person you truly are.